Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show with your host, the cryptozoologist. This episode, we're going to cover 10 Bigfoot films likely real. There might not have been actually 10. I might have been still. Well, there could be like a variation of this. Maybe there's 11 or 9 somewhere in there. Anyways, I was trying to think of the ones that I wanted the most, sort of, and I might have discounted one or two. Yeah, I didn't put in the Freeman one, which I've covered in another show and that sort of thing. But anyways, I'll cover some of the ones that are very, very interesting, where they're much higher probability that they're real than not for multi kinds of reasons. There's some that are really, really impressive, that are sort of impressive for different sorts of things. We're going to cover two native ladies' accounts, one from Quebec and Manitoba, that both were berry pickers and both ran into a Sasquatch. We're going to cover a strange sort of coffin creatures that were witnessed by Mormons back in the 1800s. Very strange, sort of a thing like that. And I wanted to cover some other things about the Pattterson film that I wanted to mention the last time and I didn't get around to. When I was saying about the weights there with the horse, right? I realize a lot of people probably would have said, hey, well, wait a minute, the horse has 4 legs, right? So, sort of thing. But the thing is that horses weigh hundreds of pounds. And so no matter what, they're only with a human being on it, right? You still have this sort of, even though the weight's distributed different, they still only got a half the about depth of what this Patty did, which had way bigger feet. And she had way bigger feet, much wider, so it takes a lot more condensed weight to sink that down. Other independent estimates believe that for sure it would have taken around anywhere from the low end of 800 and some pounds to 1,500, with the common estimate of around 1,000 or so that she would have weighed. Okay, so this is another sort of thing here, is that no matter what, even if it was a big actor of 300 or 400 pounds, and this lady had, you know what I mean, all these sort of things, right? The proper stuff to glue hair right to her muscles. Even at that, she still would have had probably at least to have another 400, 500, 600 plus pounds here on her, hidden somewhere, walking fluidly. It's impossible. I've watched the most strongest Hercules men on earth, and when they pick up 500 pounds, they can't even barely move their leg a few feet, and then it's over, right? And these are the strongest people on earth. So you're telling me that some human can just zippity-doo-dah and going along like that is not happening, right? Another thing is that humans, when we turn our neck actually turns because we have a neck and it's going out. Now, I just suggest that they do have a neck. I just suggest that they're extremely short and it's more built right in the shoulders. It's probably a defensive like thing, just like gorillas, sort of like. But I mean, even though they don't really have a neck like ours, I mean, there still is some kind of attachment there from the head to the shoulders, right, of some sort. But the thing is that in the Patty film, she actually has to turn her body and turn like this. An actor putting on the helmet wouldn't have to do that. The helmet's loose, and now you can turn your head. When you turn your head, you wouldn't be able to, the shoulders wouldn't have went with it. Everything is turned exactly because it's built right into it, right? So in order for him to have pulled that fake part off, you would have had to then glue the head onto the sort of shoulders after, once you got the actor inside. Do you see how more and more ridiculous people stating it's a fake? You can see, I mean, there's just too many things here, right? Like in this sort of thing like that. So, yeah, and other areas where they were able to even use pressure machines to test on Sasquatch, ones that did reach in similar, conditions and this kind of similar soil in other places have been estimated at one was over 1,000 pounds, another one was 1,400. One was about 900. These are footprints found right in sort of where they actually took measuring machines, and sort of that's what it would have taken. So again, how does some actor able to do these titanic strides each time and zippity doo dah without getting tired in a microsecond, right? It's not happening, right? Anyways, we'll cover that and some more sort of things coming up and that and some other unusual sort of odd side end stories and things like that. But these films, some I show the film, others because some are from M.K. Davis and other ones there where yeah, I think he does a really good job of explaining everything. And so for me to keep going on about, because I agree with the guy pretty well across the board of what he's saying, right? So there's no like I'd prefer you just to go what like but I'm showing you the things that I've noticed, that I've also noticed that he mentioned some of the same kinds of things, but it's just my perspective on these things. And the reason, because I've been going in old Halloween shops, do all kinds of things, been watching everything from Mighty Joe Young to all kinds of stuff since a tiny child, and I can really easily tell, a suit here, right? And this Pattterson thing is not a suit, right? It's just not in the same realm, man. Sorry to tell people, but there's some other ones on here, even though some you can't see the quality good enough to state that it isn't a guy in a suit. There's other factors in the film that show in the highest probability it's impossible that it's a person in a suit for other reasons, right? So we'll cover all these kinds of fascinating sort of things. And I'll think of any other updates that I wanted to mention. I'm sure there's some other things here I'm not thinking of that, but it'll pop in my mind as we go along here. Here was a terrifying incident there of a poor girl many ages ago. There, she was out in sort of this area in a forest out in BC, and went to go to the bathroom and heard the most howling, horrific thing that apparently, this is really bizarre, it scared her so much. She was a younger person. After the trip of, she didn't see the Bigfoot, but whatever it was not a wolf or anything like this, right? And also, when she was leaving with the rest of these campers, the area where this thing was screaming, they actually had to go back through, this is their way sort of back, and they found giant footprints there that look like humans, right? And sort of thing like that. But her hair actually started turning whiter after this, and she's convinced that that was what caused it. Somehow that it sort of terrified her so much that it did something to her body, and quite soon thereafter, she started getting gray hair at such an incredibly young age. Really strange. So, interesting tale. But anyways, these kinds of things. So we'll cover some different odds and ends here and that sort of thing. Right? But I want to show you these films. They're very interesting. Some, like I said, will be slides, and I'll just show you the parts that very are convincing, and then it'll make you wonder, right? Like, especially one of them that was filmed in Alberta. I'd forgotten to mention this one before, but I just, it had dawned on me, and I saw one of the clips that I had of it, and I said, oh yeah, this one. And I would give this in the highest probability is a real Sasquatch, not people, not an actor in a suit or any sort of thing, for many reasons, and I'll go on about that later. So anyways, stay tuned to this, and you'll get to see some maybe Bigfoot films you've never seen before, and they certainly have some validity to them. So anyways, stay tuned, and we'll continue on. So wasn't that interesting, eh? Now, I have seen trees in the past that were in swampy sort of places where you could bend them a little bit and that sort of thing, but the roots and things are going to move up and down, and it's you would see weaknesses in the soil. It seemed that the tree went right perfectly back into sort of the things, right? And it's not likely that it was something like that. So even though it's not the greatest, clearest of a film, and even though it could be a dude in a suit, the strength and the long lengths of arms there make it sort of somewhat more convincing that it's likely real than it wasn't one, right? You know. So, but anyways, it's just an interesting film. I'm not going to go too much on it because there's not a massive amount to analyze with it, but I mean, it's still an interesting film, and I would give it high credence due to the length of the arms and just simply how hard that would be to bend a tree like that. You'd have to be like really powerful human being to be able to do that. So, anyways, we'll continue on with the next one. So, folks, you can see here the interesting arm length of this creature in this Florida Everglades. Absolutely fascinating. And but watch the strength of them. Look at the huge length of arms. Now look at the strength of that. That is extremely convincing to me. I went with people and we've been trying to pull down things off of a tree and stuff. When you're down at that sort of base level, it's way too powerful. I mean, it's fairly convincing in a lot of ways, this film, because of those reasons. You know, so extremely interesting. The Fort Renfrew, BC Sasquatch film, Bob and Amy. Now, these people here, they have all kinds of different. So I want to start saying some things of their defense before you look at the film or any of that sort of thing. From what I can ascertain, they seem to be very straightforward, normal, nice, honest sort of people. And this was a bit by luck. This Amy and Bob there, they were out around this Fort Renfrew, and she decided to be sort of Huckleberry Finn-like, and started going off this weird pathway, just saying, let's go for fun and we'll look around. And they get out to this sort of spot, and all of a sudden in front of them there's this big giant shaggy monster. All I can tell you is I've looked and, like I said, actually wrestled a gigantic Kodiak Alaskan brown bear, or AKA grizzly-like sort of thing, and have been held captive in the can by a huge sort of bear that was pretty decent size to him. And I told you also, seeing a giant bear coming out of a bush and seemingly waiting for people to have us as lunch, and a few other sort of strange things. Actually, I found a picture recently of me feeding another bear. I forgot about that. So I have this sort of weird thing with bears. I guess the animals like me, right? so whatever it is, I seem to have a sort of funny abilities of these sorts of things. And all I can tell you is that's not a bear. So, and the way it's positioned and standing, and I just don't believe these people have 10 zillion videos, and it has nothing to do with Bigfoot, nothing to do with anything. They just happen to find this sort of thing. This area here for massive centuries has had gazillions of Bigfootish sort of reports all around, anywhere from Vancouver Island all through BC. I went every place you can humanly think of. The only place I actually wasn't in was actually Vancouver itself. And Victoria was on the edges of these things, but I went all the way from 100 Mile House to these Barkerville, you name it, these crazy places, like all over the place, right? And the forests and things that I saw, and being lost for like 8-9 hours in the wilderness and all kinds of other things. 100%, I can assure you that there's two places that I'm 100% convinced that Bigfootish like things exist. 100%. I think certain states may want to get on the bandwagon just so people can have a few Bigfoot experts around there and these kinds of things, but or that the creature goes through there, very rarely a wild human, but there's just not enough of this sort of action going on to make these states worthwhile sort of hunting, right? But in BC for sure, and in Florida, these two places do have. Florida has more of like wild skunk apish. They could be anything from orangutans that were let loose massive ages ago from circuses, who knows, to whatever, right? But they also had giants in the past that seemingly aren't seen much in these days and times, but real monsters like the sort of out western sort of ones. And I have seen in certain ones and witnesses, a lot of them, where the creature is extremely over furry and they got this shaggy sort of thing going, and you can't see any much muscle definition here or anything. So all I can tell you is that hair on this creature looks to me natural. There's different, actually odd links to it and different things. I don't believe this was a person made a suit. I highly doubt it, just because of the witnesses involved, the sheer sort of weirdness of the whole thing that they happened. So in order for Amy to fool Bob, she would have already had to have been to this spot and sort of had this all set up with her buddy to trick Bob to put it on the video, or vice versa, right? And considered Amy is the one that decided to go off the beaten path here, it's not likely that Bob did it, right? So then who was waiting for Bob and Amy in a fake suit out in the middle of this sort of forest, right? Like, you see what I mean? There's these people, if you go check them out and look at this guy's face and that, I would say 99.99999, I'm going to give these people 100% credibility. I believe that what they filmed there actually was a Sasquatch. So even though it's not very clear, and there's some other things, but I'm not the only guy that agrees with this. There's other people out there, including that young fellow that I mentioned there. He actually does a show on it. If you haven't caught him before, Mr. Bob Gimlin, he's quite the sort of, he's got a good mind to him, and he does his shows well, and I like the cartoon-like sort of things, and he picks stories like me where he's interested in these kinds of things, so we have a similar sort of interest here, right? So, but I don't know him. I've never spoke to him or that sort of thing. But he covers it, and also you can see it on Bob and Amy's sort of thing, right? But anyways, he gives some ideas too, like myself in here. And all I'm saying is that I just go by interviewing gazillions of people over the years, right, and knowing lots of characters and comedians, and I could tell within 5 minutes of this guy's like Big Ed, where all of a sudden at first the pike he got was a foot long, and by the end of the story now is 18 feet long. I know these kinds of people, and there's all kinds of them out there, and they're fun, and maybe some of the things they're saying is true to a certain degree where they're over exaggerating, right? Like there was this case in the 1800s as a branch of these kinds of witnesses. This guy, they actually caught this wild man, right? But this guy at first had wrestled with him in this sort of cave, and he claimed that he was, fighting for half an hour sort of thing. But I mean, the reality here is that probably this guy, if he, from his descriptions and all the kinds of things that were said around the sort of area, and there was another fellow like this too that had claimed the same thing, that he wrestled with the monster in the cave, but I think that would escape, but also in the 1800s. But point is that these kinds of characters, usually those sort of, everything's enlarged, but there may be a grain of truth at the beginning of it, right? So even those kind of guys, even though they're spreading a bit of a whopper here, they might have actually seen something or some little thing originally. That's most of the time I've noticed this. Like, the guy's telling me about a big giant bear that he's seen. Then later on, I actually see that it is a bear, but it's actually a cub or something, right? Like, you see what I mean? Like, there's people that sort of just, like, they did tell you the truth to the basics, but now they've exaggerated a lot. Then there's just outright people that just love to get on the sort of news and want to, yeah, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter whether they've seen anything or not. They'll come up with a whopper as they go along, right? They're attention grabbers and these kinds of things. But all I can tell you is these people don't look like any of these kinds of sorts of people. They look very credible to me, and this suit, if it's a suit, they must have went through a lot of effort here for really no reason, because it's not like they already have 10 zillion views. Just like I mentioned there, I forgot to put him in, I should have, but I already covered him in another one. Actually, before we get into this, I will mention some things. So even though this is the top 10, I'm only going to talk about a few things of a couple of films that I've already shown on other shows that you should watch there, really, because it's no use me keep repeating like some, but there was some things I didn't mention about either one of them. So put them in, and then you can go look at them personally yourself, and or go to the original sort of places and that sort of thing. But this just, there's like the Pattterson film, the one from Russia, and this one that was this guy, what's her name, the something family, the Family Brown, not the Family Brown. That was an old country singing group from way down here. I met them way back when I was younger and sort of thing like that. But Family Roberts, something family. Sasquatch. Anyways, I'll put it in here. I'll think of their name in a second, but I can still see the guy with his video, and this Sasquatch is running through a fire. And they had started this brush fire to clear out brush and this sort of thing, and I really doubt that some guy is going to run in these kinds of suits that can burst into flames in a second, running through at quite a good speed here. And this dude must have been quite tall. Okay. There's just, so that one will cover, I'll just sort of show some frames of it and things like that, but that I didn't mention the last time. But these, some of these, I'm just going to not cover as much because I covered them on other shows. But certainly it's another sort of viable one where, even though it's really far off, the belief that some nut's going to be running around through flames just to get a Bigfoot film when the guy already has 10 zillion viewers, just him going around, riding on his little tractor or mowing his lawn. It's amazing to me, but there's all kinds of people that get like millions of views on the strangest things that they do, right? That most people wouldn't think would be that exciting, right? But I've watched some of the stuff. It's entertaining, so I can see why people watch it and that sort of thing, right? So it's interesting. All I'm saying is I doubt this farmer guy went out of his way to create this Bigfoot to get more views when he already gets 10 zillion views just riding his tractor, right? So to me, it's not very likely by looking at this guy and everything else that it's fake. So I think it's called, his name's Roberts or something. It's very close to that. If not, if I made a mistake, I apologize, but it's Roberts Family Bigfoot or close name like that sort of thing like that. Like I said, I'm much more of a physical person. I remember people, even if I saw them when they were 2 years of age, even though their faces changed quite a bit, I can still tell it was them somehow. So yeah, I have they call this eidetic memory with sort of pictures and sort of things like that, right? That's why I remember lots of things, even when I was a tiny child, actually fishing adventures. I even remember how many fish I caught on quite a few of them. Many of them I wrote down. I covered for decades. I would do that, write down the sort of how many, because I had this little counters. And my mother helped me figure out some way of, she had some kind of weird thing to count for her classes and things like that. And it was this almost like a combination lock like thing. And I'd put it around a string on my neck, and then after you get 10, then you get 11, 12, and then you can get up to the next number, 100 and some, right? So I'd keep meticulous records for my business of how many carp that I was selling and catching, and these kinds of, all these different fish species, right? So I remember all these sort of things. I'm like, I'm amazed, like I talk to a lot of people, and the person doesn't even remember what we did a year ago. and I don't get this, and they're really highly intelligent people, but I have this weird sort of thing where I actually remember things from 2, 3, 4, 5, every single, I can see them right still in my mind. A lot of these things, right? They had the odd day I've forgotten, or I might not, and a lot of people's names I can never remember. Never, I'm not good at that sort of thing. That maybe I tune them out or whatever it is. I have no idea. But the bottom line is that that's why sort of that I can do that sort of thing. And there is a lot of older people that are like me that have these sorts of ability. In fact, I saw this actress. This was really interesting. They were going on about her, and she's identical to me. She remembers everything when she was 2, 3, 4. She points when she first started school here and that. I could do the exact same thing. Every single place from here to Seattle, California, doesn't matter. I remember these areas, right? I remember the big needle. I remember all these sort of, I can see them right in my head, right? And me walking around or doing things, right? So that's a cool gift to have, I guess. But at the same token, this is why when I'm looking at things, I notice weird things that maybe somehow my mind sort of really gets into what I'm looking at, and I can see little flaws and strange things, and I remember it, keep circling in my mind, and something, if it's suspicious to me, eventually will sort of come out of this combination, and then it'll give me a follow-up ideas to figure out whether am I being like overly cautious about this film or not, or things like that. Like, so it's good to have these sort of things, but I find it strange that people can't really remember when they're a kid. I find that I don't understand that, but at the same token, a lot of people I've met that they can tell me every single person's name from here to China and remember all their lyrics of their songs and things, and a lot of those I can't do, right? So I guess that certain parts of the mind that each individual has sort of different gifts sometimes, and it's rare where they have 10 million of them, sort of, right? Sort of thing, but anyways, just all I'm saying is I'm pretty observant when I'm looking at these sort of things, and to me, I by interviewing all these kinds of people, all these ages, and these different things, I would say that Bob and Amy seem like pretty credible sort of people here. So, anyways, we'll look at that next year and see what you think. So next year, the Fort Renfrew, BC Sasquatch film, Bob and Amy, filmed by Amy in BC, as I was mentioning. If these people, they're, apologize, they're very sort of credible witnesses to me when looking upon them. Now, I'm not going to cover. I'd prefer that you can look at there's the Bob Gimlin one, or you can go to Bob and Amy and visit it there, that sort of thing. But I just wanted to talk about a few of the frames in here and things like that, because basically you don't see a lot because the creature's just sort of digging around this tree. However, here's the interesting things. You can clearly see that there seems to be some kind of conical head here. At the top there, you can actually see that point. The creature has different colorations of skin layered through it here. You can see certain parts doesn't have as much hair. Again, this is not suit-like. Usually these suits are sort of made in a certain sort of way, and it's a lot of extra work to give all this extra authenticity to it. The shagginess in different lengths and the sheer width of this thing is absolutely atrocious. I mean, he's quite the monster here, okay? So now, here he is from further away, sort of, and you can see he's behind that sort of tree there and that sort of thing. And then on this one here, he starts sort of going away, okay? And you can see a part of him there. But the thing is that it can't be a bear, right? I mean, it's not in the right sort of position. He seems to be half standing up and half crouching, like as if he was looking for something, or maybe he noticed and heard them and decided to hide and not move. Or she, if it's a girl, She definitely needs a soaking. 'Cause that's one furry ladyboy there. I'm not a big person for the fuzz there, so that's why I was commenting on these. I mean, that would be the most nightmarish experience in the world to me, is some giant lady Sasquatch leaping out of the sort of woods there, and she's all furry like that. I couldn't handle that. I would be freaking, man, like literally freaking, you know. Like the mermaid is way less scary to me. But all kidding aside, though, seriously, I just find these people very credible witnesses. She just happened to, women's intuition is strange, right? And I mean, something got her to take this pathway, and she's creeping along, and all of a sudden there's Mr. Squatch, right? Sort of thing. So no matter what, I would highly think that this film has some, for sure, some credibility, because it can't be a bear. I mean, seriously, look at the width of this thing. I mean, seriously, compared to that tree. I mean, these people, you see them later standing around trees, they don't look anything like that, right? And you can actually see muscular like things in this parts here, even though like a suit wouldn't have even bulked out as well as what this thing's doing. The head seems to have no neck whatsoever. It seems to be pretty good built in there. There is some lightness around the edge where somebody could have like a helmet-like thing. I noticed that. However, it's the same color as the rest, and it just could be that the creature in a couple of little things, because you don't see it anywhere else. It's just in a microscopic spot, so it's not likely that. I mean, if it had been a helmet, you should have seen this gray line much further going around the whole sort of thing, right? So, and you can see its back muscle here as it's going down. You can see this sort of shoulder-like sort of stuff coming out here, and it's quite muscular and big, right? So, all in all, you got some pretty decent, nice people there. They have tons of videos that has nothing to do with Bigfoot. They're not Bigfoot people. They wouldn't know Bigfoot from a Martian sort of idea. They're not into Bigfoot, right? So, in that sort of sense, the what else would you expect them to think, right? Because that's, if I was looking at that, I would be pretty convinced it's not a bear either, right? Like, I mean, everything is non-bear like. Bears don't usually aren't going to hide and timid in behind a tree like that, right? But some Sasquatch are known, just like I said, if they are some kind of ancient primitive human or highly sort of gorilla-like sort of species, or a mixture of both here that's floating around, that we're seeing both kinds here. No matter what, all of them have the same sort of things here, where some are cannibals, some are nice, some will run from you, some might shoot a rock at you, which we'll cover later, and things like this, right? So these things are sort of, it just all adds up to me more likely that this one probably is worth discussing because of some of the things in it. The sheer creatures with there, and the way, when you look at these people in the interview, to me they look like they're honest and they're not lying. So I would bet that, I bet you, even if both of them, I wonder if they'd be willing to agree to it, but I bet you they would pass a lie detector test. I'm pretty sure of this. So who then you'd have to ask the question, how would a fake artist way out in the woods here, that's off a beaten path, know that Amy or Bob are going to come along, right? And sort of like be waiting for them there. I mean, come on, really? Like, so again, this area, Vancouver Island, all this sort of around the whole sort of BC sort of thing here is loaded full of Bigfoot reports, on a consistent basis, right? Because again, if they're humans, they just, they're smart and they know to avoid us, right? Sort of thing, or great apes or whatever they may be, or a mixture, like I said, of both kinds are being seen, right? Which I guarantee you both exist. There's for sure some are definitely a gigantopithecus like sort of thing to gorilla, orangutanish, that sort of ones, right? But some of them, especially ones that are speaking in primitive dialect and other weird things that also are huge and furry and all that sort of thing, these must be humans of some sort. Like, so that's, and I mean, it's not, I don't know why people are so skeptical of this. In the South American jungle, pretty well on a monthly basis, some new tribes discovered out there. And none of these people have ever been contacted yet. They got photos of them or some little film of them running by, and the scientist admits that yes, they exist, because it's a lot easier to do that. They see the guy come out and he goes, "Unga bunga wunga," yeah, you know, and they got the spears and horns through their nose. But when they see a film like this, even though those films are blurry too, I mean, I could say the same thing. How do I know that's not a guy just dressed in a suit, right? Sort of thing. But no, they have no problem accepting any of these and not shocked by it whatsoever. So why are you shocked? And this is a low IQ. This is what I'm saying. We're not thinking here, people. Really, we're not at all. Scientists, to me, sound silly when they talk like this, because if primitive humans can hide out amongst us in many countries around the world that we're still discovering, these are just hairy sort of versions of them. That's all. Does that mean because the guy's hairy that he's not as intelligent as you? How do you know that? That is the most low IQ sort of premise. This is what I'm saying. This chimpanzee stuff you've been taught that they're caveman and ooh and all this. Yeah, they might be cavemanish because this is all that they've been showing. They know their forests. They know what berries to eat. They know what's foods around at that time of year and that sort of thing. And then they live a cavemanish like lifestyle because they were not taught it young to sort of our world, right? But I bet you if you could get one of these little dudes before they're, let's say, a year of age and start working with them and say, wunga bunga, whatever, right? And start getting a language with them, I bet you could train them the same as any other human being. And in fact, maybe some of them be smarter than you. And then maybe we could finally get down to the truth, because then you could ask the guy, do you remember anything like, do you know where you were born or things like that? Maybe you'd be lucky and get some kind of information from them if they were younger, right? Where you could start training them. But once the guy's like at a certain age, the mind doesn't work the same. It doesn't absorb the same and that sort of thing. So if we caught a wild guy where he's grunting and stuff and he's old, it's not likely we're ever going to be able to sort of work with him enough to get him to start speaking to us, unless by fluke that the guy happens to be really unusual, smart sort of creature here just naturally, right? And catches on, right? So anyways, it's just the thoughts here. But I mean, to me, like I said, there's already proof in caves, giant skeletons, they're sitting in museums. Case closed. Bigfoot exists. Whether you guys want to believe this or not, but anyways, we'll continue on. Here's another one. The creek crosser, M.K. Davis. Okay. Now, you can see that little sort of, I don't know if you can see that little arrow way off in the distance. You can see that black object there. There he is. I'm not going to get into this film too much because it's a longer film, because M.K. Davis, what he does is he sort of, what M.K. Davis does is that he sort of, does a lot of analysis and freezes all the frames and these different things. So I'd prefer you to go see his sort of thing. He does a great explanation of it. He's familiar with the property. He went down there and he stands exactly where you see this creek crosser come. And he's actually, the head is above the bank, yet when he stands down there, he's way below the bank. So indicating this dude had to be at least another 2 to 3 feet taller than Mr. Davis is, and he's 6 foot something, I think about 6.5 feet or some whatever, like some at least decent 6 foot range on him, right? So also you see him sort of do some quadruped-like things and different things as he shoots along, and the speed of him is quite incredible to come along that creek. It's just too hard of a one to freeze frames or even show the films properly. It's better with a guy like him because he's taking a long time and showing you every little intricate detail. But I'm just telling you, in my personal belief, I believe this film is in the highest probability a real Sasquatch, but more of an ape kind, like a orangutan-ish sort of thing. Now, here's interesting, on the same sort of property, so proving that likely there's a few of these, This one is almost even more convincing in some ways, yet not as close up, and you don't see as good of the movements of the creature. However, there's no way that this is a dude in a suit, likely in the highest probability. Okay, so do you see the cow there? Okay, on the left hand side. Now, this is part of one of the frames, just about probably about a minute into it or something like that. Okay, so do you see where the giant cow is? Now look to the right and you can see this white standing figure there. Okay, that's Whitey. Okay, he's an actual white albino like sort of Sasquatch. Okay, now look at him over here. Now you can see him if you okay. You see the three on the right hand frame here. You see the three front trees, the closest ones to us when you're staring at this, not the ones in the far back off where the cow is, but the three right in front of us here. Look in the middle, almost well, to the left hand side of the fork of the center tree, and you'll see Whitey. Okay. And you can clearly see now that he's starting to come down on all this sort of all fours like sort of thing, but yet he's still taller than this cow. Okay, so the speed that he completely covers this titanic distance. So now I'm supposed to believe that some guy is like 9 or 10 feet tall, because he'd have to be at least, I could not believe, way under 8 foot something on this dude, because it's impossible. This is a big cow, and this guy is like way over towering this thing, right? And he's never really fully standing on perfect straight legs, and he sort of runs and gallops like with all fours and stuff. So I at any point, it's really hard to get him. This is one of the best ones on the left, where he seems to be more standing right at that point. But he covers a titanic distance in microseconds. The odds of some guy, like, how do you be 9 or 10 feet tall? That means that you'd have to have stilts in it or something. And there's no way some guy can run like that in all 4 legs and then 2 and everything on stilts. So, and the width of him and everything is extraordinary. So even though it's a crappy, blurry sort of film, I have no other choice but to, in the highest probability, that this my friend Mr. Whitey and the Creek Crosser are both real. And Mr. M.K. Davis, I've never spoken to him in my life, or I don't know him, but he I really like some of his analysis of things. I love his voice; it's fantastic, and just everything about the guy is just like really an interesting fellow. So watch his sort of takes on these. He's very intelligent. He has better software than me, that he can blow these things up and do all this sort of thing, and he's good at his software showing, right? Like better than what I'm going to do. So, but the point is that both of us here would agree the higher probability that these are more likely real because of these reasons, right? Like, I mean, seriously, this Whitey is quite impressive. That's all I can say. Now there was another one that I wanted to cover in here, as sort of thing, and it's another one that he covers about this Bigfoot crosses in front of this barn, okay? And this Bigfoot crosses in front of this barn, and he goes by where this tractor comes out, and that's what scared him, the tractor and things, right? I think it's called the Tractor Bigfoot or something like that, or whatever. But he can also find it on his channel. And he shows you, he freezes the frames of where this Bigfoot came out, and then comparing it to the tractor, there is again no way this Bigfoot would be way up at the top of the near tractor here, looking at the farmer guy as he's driving by. Now, if you know these things, I've been on many a farm sort of thing, and I know these bigger sort of tall tractors, right? And I guarantee you that this guy had to be huge if he was a dude in a suit. And if you see him compared to the width of the burn and everything else, the creature seems way too big to be a human in a suit, and he covers it quite quickly, and everything about it is sort of, again, not logical, that even though it's blurry, just like these two, and sadly this is the case. However, what the things they show just cannot, in the highest probability, be sort of people in a sort of suit or things like that. So, anyways, whoever sent these to Mr. Davis there, or wherever he got these, it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, is I would love to visit this property. I would love to invest in all kinds of more cameras all around, because it's likely they could still be alive, either one of these, even though they were filmed fairly few years back. They very likely, if there's two of them, there could be some more floating around, right? And that sort of thing. So one of them's white, one of them's black. As far as I know, they could be a couple, whatever, right? Buddies, brothers, sisters, whatever, right? But anyways, all I know is that it's the whitey guy is very slim chance that could be a dude in a suit, because I mean the size of him compared when he's, look at the height of that. You can actually, like I said, you're looking to the left, you can see the whitey. Look at how much taller he is than that cow. I mean, his body, it looks like the cow's only around where his waist is. I mean, come on, seriously. Like, I mean, this dude had to be, so who can get in a Bigfoot suit, 9 to 10 feet tall, bare minimum 8 foot something, and be able to leap across and run a whole giant distance like that, and on all fours and everything in microseconds, and be that wide and all that? Not likely. So anyways, even though it's not conclusive like the Pattterson film or the Russian ones or some of the other ones that I'm going to show, as where they're even a bit more, some of the things you can see at least a little bit better, I'd still say that my buddy Mr. Whitey, I hope he or she is still around, and my Creek Crosser buddy, because I'm very and 99.99% convinced that both of these are authentic films and worthwhile discussing, and that's the bottom line. So anyways, we'll go on to some more next year, but anyways, stay tuned. So next year, the Miles Lamont Squamish, BC Mountains film in 2011, and it's this Bigfoot-like thing going up a hill. Now, I really have a hard time believing that this is some kind of hiker guy going up this. I mean, these things are prone to avalanches. The guy's going completely the wrong sort of direction. Why would you be going that way? You can't get up this sort of mountain, right? But maybe there's a cave in there, or a Bigfoot-like creature could climb up this. Now, get a load of this. This is hilarious. Some guy who claims he's some kind of hiker and sort of thing, and definitely a guy that would love to get himself out on the news every minute. All of a sudden, he saw this, and he imagined in his mind, he looked back at his records, and he found that he was hiking around there in the month of July, right? So when he said it, then they interviewed separately the people that filmed this, and completely about a month difference apart. So this guy just wanted to advertise his YouTube channel and to be, yeah, I mean, get all the attention on him. Never mind with Bigfoot, I'm important, right? That sort of thing. But I mean, this guy, and he claimed that he was walking around in his shirt or something, and it was sunny out and warm. Like, does that look like sort of where you're going up this, that you'd be walking around in a shirt? Like in a t-shirt, and it was nice out. Like, I mean, come on, really? So I mean, completely delusional sort of stuff. You're just another person that wants to get themselves on the internet, right? Like, sort of thing. I'm astounded by why. Like, I'm very private. I'm completely the opposite. I don't even like showing the odd fish pictures and stuff, because I just don't care about any of these sorts of things. I think this stuff is ridiculous. Like, so what if somebody has 1 million viewers? You're not any better than a person that has 1 viewer. Really, I mean, these things doesn't make somebody incredible just because they can talk better than the next individual and sort of put up a better show, right? I mean, yeah, maybe they're more entertaining, but that doesn't make them more valuable of a human being over somebody else or other things, right? Like, I mean, there's all kinds of shy people on here that, like, there was a girl I saw, that this girl, she got on America's Talent there, and I mean, this girl was making shakes on YouTube, right? This is sort of, the weirdest sort of thing. And she'd get up in her pajamas and sing away and this sort of thing. And I actually saw her before because I have an eidetic memory, and I actually liked her voice and I thought she was great. But here she decided to go do this, and I mean, she blew the roof off the place, right? So I mean, yet she's this very shy, quiet sort of person, decided to do this, and all of a sudden got all these viewers, right? And that's great. But the thing is that she's not like one of these people like this guy is, where this guy's just trying to sort of get him out in the spotlight, right? Sort of think so. I mean, these things don't impress me in the slightest, and people that are like that are just, yeah, look at me, like on the Seinfeld episode, look at me, I'm wonderful, and, and he's got the mink coat and the whole thing, like that sort of thing. There's a lot of people that are like that need, over attention. So this guy tried to steal a legitimate sort of thing where these people, like, they looked at this guy and they knew it couldn't be a human being. Like, I mean, they would have seen the knapsack and these different things. Then he claimed he didn't. I think he said he didn't have one. I can't remember. But anyways, all these sort of anyways, it was not this guy on this mountain. That's the bottom line. So I have no idea what really has occurred here. I mean, I suppose it's a slimly feasible. There was another film I should have covered there. It's just actually a picture. I've never actually seen the film of it. Maybe there is a film of it, but there was a Yeti in Nepal that was filmed by these tourists. They were up in this valley, and there's no way on earth that. And you can, on that one, you can clearly see much better. It's a fully shaggy, Bigfootish like guy, right? It's certainly not a person with a knapsack and skis on, sort of thing, right? So in that case, 100%. And the same thing, he's going up a terrain that nobody in their right mind would do. I mean, this could avalanche at any second, especially in July, like in warmer sort of months there, and these sort of things. Even at the highest elevations, if some really good warm stuff occurs for a bit, all you need is a yodel lady who or anything going, and it could be flattened down. So, I mean, I really doubt that this guy that, claims he's the world's greatest sort of mountaineer sort of thing was up there doing this at this point, and just, maybe he was dreaming that he was. But anyways, but we'll leave him alone. I have no idea. Maybe he really was up in the mountains, and maybe he really does camp up in the mountains. But I highly doubt that was that guy. And his time when he claimed he was there is about a month difference when these people filmed it. So he couldn't guess, right? Because now he's, like if you make up a big whopper and didn't think up that part that you didn't know, you just said, oh yeah, I looked by my records, it was in July. So now he's got a 1 out of 30 chance here to sort of get the correct sort of thing, right? And so he failed, right? Sort of. So even if it was all made up and he completely knew he wasn't there or any of that, he still had a 1 in 30 because he wasn't probably expecting somebody to go this far into verification, right? And that sort of thing. But anyways, I believe this guy about as much as I believe that Peter Pan's flying over the Parliament buildings right now. So anyway, we'll continue on. Just another, like I said, people like to get themselves in the news. Just like with the guy I mentioned there, he claimed that Brontosaurus, ancient cave drawing, was a bear, a snake, and a moose or something melted together. I mean, mind-bogglingly foolishness. But anyways, we'll continue on. So Alberta, Canada, Bigfoot throws tree. This is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. I actually got this fellow that I know. He's a big, tall guy, and we found this one that weighed about 30 pounds, and he couldn't even sort of fling remotely like what this beast here does. Right? This was filmed by Alberta workers. They were working on an oil field sort of thing, and there's a gate, and then there's a big giant forest behind it. And all of a sudden, they started noticing this commotion and hearing, And all kinds of experts have looked at these logs that are real expert loggers, and they're thinking that this thing might be like 45, 50 feet sort of tall. It depending on the individual, but nobody's giving it less than 30 feet here, sort of thing, right? And probably at least would weigh bare minimum like 40, 50 pounds, sort of thing, and maybe way more. So now you have to believe that a guy can, with one arm crouched down, with just him sort of whoosh like this, you can see he shoots this thing. When it comes flying down, it can't be a plastic pole or something. It looks too solid cement. It falls right correctly, like what I got my buddy to do shooting one of these things, and he couldn't remotely duplicate. And then this guy's a very big fellow, 6 foot something on him. So I was curious about this film when I first saw it, and I'm in the highest probability this cannot be a guy in a suit. And Alberta oil workers, these guys make big cash every second. They're working away, doing their thing. I think they have better things to do with their time than to create, fake Bigfoot films and somehow get giant 40, 50 foot sort of logs that are made out of plastic and, get this kind of suit. I mean, it all doesn't add up, right? So all I know is that it looks like it lands properly. And this sort of thing. Oh, there was somebody had mentioned, I didn't notice that because I can't see it that well in some of the frames. It's a bit blurry, the versions I've seen. But apparently they believe that this guy actually ripped this sort of stump out, like ripped it out, the standing sort of thing. So then, I mean, in order to do that, I mean, holy mackerel, man. Yeah. So, I mean, another impressive one here, like that one in the Florida sort of thing. And this creature has a very long arms. And so then this is another thing. How do you get this guy to have such strength and now maneuver correctly the arms and everything with extra sort of a digit arm added on, like a plastic arm? You're not going to be able to squeeze properly and get the great swing and all that. I mean, come on. I mean, so I would highly suggest that in the highest probability, this is actually a real film of a real Sasquatch, and quite fascinating. Now, I don't know why they would do this. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they try and shake the bark off of something like bugs that might be in it that they might eat of some sort, like I don't know, like worms and stuff. I mean, I even seen that survivor guy. He was digging around in trees like that and digging out some disgusting worms. I've been near starved a few times where we couldn't find water and was lost out in the wilderness a few times when I was younger. And I never got down to the bugs part, but I was tempted to eat some pretty sort of lucky things each time. We found wild berries and other sorts of things that you could eat, right? But I mean, it's a lot easier today with this technology to find your way back and these sorts of things. So even though I had scout like training and that sort of thing, and could find my way out and know how to look for the moss and things growing on the tree and that sort of thing. But still you can make mistakes and this sort of thing. And it's feasible, even people that have really spent a lot of times in the woods, that you can run into trouble fast if you don't find a food source around and shelter and things like that, right? So it all depends on the luck of the area that you're in. But anyways, all I can tell you is that in the highest probability, that's probably a real sort of Sasquatch, because it's just all of it adds up more likely real than not. Here's another one. The Siberian Sasquatch runs down a hill. This one's another sort of fascinating one here. I mean, extremely interesting. Okay, it's hard to see these, but I tried to get as many frames as I could. Now, the first one here, you can see he's bent, he's running, and he goes incredible speed. I mean, this is a deep snow. People can't run likely in a suit this way, right? But all I know is that the creature seems to have pretty decent long arms to him and legs. right here in the third one, he's actually bent like in the Pattterson film. He has that amazing sort of deep knee bend there. And this guy vanishes quite quickly, and a huge covers a quite a bit of distance. And the sound of the people when they first notice this thing running down the hill, they're all terrified, and they sound terrified, not like actors. So all in all, I'd say higher probability it's real than not, even though it doesn't last long. I just find it extremely hard to believe that you have to have really good actors here and to go through a bunch of trouble, and somebody incredibly good shape that can run through waist deep sort of snow drifts here, running full blast and sort of I don't know, it's just not likely. So anyways, I'd say this is another more probable sort of decent film. Here's a fantastic one, the New York baby Sasquatch. You can actually see, yeah, this is either a Bigfoot or some man or something that had some wild pet of some sort. But to me, I mean, it's very interesting. You see this Bigfoot creature come running, a baby one. You can see his little head down there, and the taller Bigfoot guy standing here. So now he actually leaps way up in the air and leaps into his arms. Now Mr. Bigfoot guy then flings him way up in the tree. Okay, and then he starts like leaping around, sort of. He starts leaping around in the sort of tree, and it is like absolutely very, very interesting. You can see here on the right hand side, see where the circle is. He's way up there, and he's like jumping around and things like that. It couldn't be a human. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. No human could maneuver through trees like that. Like, it's not feasible, especially some young kid. I mean, it's just no matter what. So either that this was some strange man with some wild pet of some kind of monkey-like species that happened to be around here, that he didn't, none of these people noticed this thing at all. They're way below, and about sort of below, way below. This is up on a mountainous sort of thing above them, and they were being videoed just doing their own thing, and they just happened to catch this in the background and didn't even realize it was going on. So these people, Bigfoot people or whatever they were, but all I can tell you is that it's more probable because this guy kind of looks furry to me, and sort of like doesn't look like a human here. He's funny looking. So that, and the way that this baby Bigfoot, it's not likely a kid because of his maneuvers seems to be too good. And so then you'd have to have a midget guy or something that would be an acrobat. And I mean, it's a bit out there considering nobody made claim of anything. Nobody's getting big cash from it. Nobody's anything, right? So again, very another one that's very highly probable. There's another one that M.K. Davis plays, actually, that I forgot to show too, and it's the same thing. You see this baby Bigfoot, he leaps up a side of a tree, leaps around and swings all over the place. Totally impossible that that's a human or a child or anything. No way on this earth. I would bet any money you want to on this planet that you couldn't prove that that's a person that did that. Right? So, I mean, even more convincing than this one, right? And I mean, even this one, I'd be never willing to bet that. I mean, I could say that it's feasible that that's a human, and he has a pet chimp, and the pet chimp then ran to him and jumped up in the air. But I mean, the odds of that is like, I mean, just as weird and slim as the Bigfoot being there and doing it, right? Considering that there's tens of thousands of Bigfoot reports, right, by now, then this, I mean, wouldn't be that surprising if they actually exist, that this does occur occasionally, right? So, I mean, it's one of those things, but I highly doubt it was a human anyways. I guarantee you whatever was in that tree wasn't a human anyways. I know that much. So anyways, we'll move on to the next one. Now, Yosemite National Park, I've been there. I walked right near those geysers and that sort of thing like that. Interviewed a ranger that saw a seal and about this sea serpent in the lake and all kinds of stuff. So I had some fun adventures in that sort of area there. And again, knowing the area and this sort of thing, I have an extremely hard time believing that that this sort of that this could be possibly like sort of like see it doesn't look CGI. It's very hard to believe that you're going to get like a pile of Bigfoot actors there to come across these sort of screens, right? And the height of them, and one of them for sure, is absolutely very convincing. See the guy here up at the top, right? Okay. Now, uh, when if you compare him to those buffalo below, right? This dude has to be like over 7 feet. He for sure would be in this sort of range. Now, sadly, it's very hard to get this sort of film really well. The pictures are blurry and strange, but the on the right hand here on the bottom one, you'll see three Bigfoot like creatures going left to right, but only this guy comes out this way. The other ones seem to have vanished. So a lot of people have tried to claim it's this and that, but all I know is that it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get a bunch of actors that are going to take risks with steam shooting jets that could fly at any second and get you, and now you're going to be barbecued Bigfoot, right? That's one thing. It's freezing up there. This was a government like sort of cam here sort of thing, as far as my understanding. So that's another sort of issue that you'd have to sort of have this all planned and know that that camera was there and all that sort of thing. And and a lot of people that have looked at this CGI wise don't believe that it's so. I do find the way he walks strange, like more humanish in some ways. But then I thought about it that he could be that because it's icy and slippery and things like that, that a Bigfoot may have to sort of walk a bit more cautious in some icy like spot, just like a human would, right? So I mean, it's feasible, right? But anyways, it's just more of my belief of that it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get somehow three actors that can easily maneuver through this sort of terrain here in the freezing thing that are titanic compared to sort of these this sort of these big buffalo here, okay? Like, I mean, the guy is up on this sort of ridge, but if you measure him compared to sort of these buffalo, he's huge. So this is a problem. A guy in a suit isn't very likely, right? So anyways, it's one of those ones where it's certainly not conclusive of any sort and that sort of thing. But I mean, it is interesting. You got several plus Sasquatch sort of creatures here coming across the screen. Uh, One of them you can clearly measure up against the buffalo and quite clearly see he must be quite a tall, sort of big dude. And sort of, so now you have to have pretty big individual actors, right? And that sort of thing. And somebody nuts enough to wander around when you can see, even in the background, way over there, one of these spring mists is shooting up or something. I mean, at any second, these guys could be barbecue beef, right? So, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could be fraudulent, but I'll give it more on the fence that it's real than not, sort of thing. Here's another interesting one that the rock throwing Bigfoot of Utah. Okay, now here's some interesting things. This guy's come along. You start to hear him. He's almost gasping for air because he's a bit nervous and all that sort of thing, and he's a bit paranoid of this creature, so he's trying to stay a certain distance. But all I can tell you is that there's some weird things. The creature's arms are extremely long, and I mean extremely. So even though it has that furry, sooty, like sort of stuff to it a little bit, he does have a seemingly cranium point on his head. So at least I'll give them that. He's quite wide and furry. You can see here his legs are bent strangely, but it's the length of his arms when he shoots this. His arms are too big to be a normal person. So then you'd have to have an extension. So then how do you pick up an easily a rock and get this big power and shoot this sort of thing and be able to grasp with your hand if it's a fake extension, right? It would be very difficult to do because you would see the breakage part when the guy's going to fling like to do this. It's not likely. So because of the length of this creature's arms, even though it's blurry, and because of the muscular sort of bend in the strange way, he even has the same kind of rump like the Pattterson lady and this sort of thing. And they're known to do this sort of thing. It's more likely real than not real. So I'll just say at least it's worth debating. That we'll put it that way, right? Okay. So, but it's interesting. Now, of course, this one here, I will battle with any human being on this planet day and night. I don't care what skeptic you are. Right there proves 100% that this film is not an actor in a suit. Here, I blew it up. You go look, stare at the arms here, the length. You tell me any human being in this universe has legs that arms that long. Impossible, impossible. And you can't say it's some kind of extension because this guy's able to go a near football-like field sort of thing here, going poop, 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 and he's gone in 3 seconds. At leaping, like Titanic leaps where he's on all fours, he stands up a bit, he runs on all fours again, leaps again. I mean, the most astonishing thing I have ever seen in my entire life. It's more convincing than even the Pattterson film. And he has a skunk-like sort of thing, which is interesting because the exact same feature was described in the in the Florida market. When he first got the name skunk ape, it had nothing to do with the stench. It was because there was this one that was seen with a white band all the time, exactly like you see on this sort of thing. So, I mean, again, very fascinating. But anyways, I don't care what anybody claims. No way that this is a guy in a suit. I will defend this film to the ends of the earth. I have never seen any human being watching every Olympics, watching great sorts of people doing all kinds of leaps and stuff. They all would pale in comparison to this dude. Impossible. You got this long of arms. Nobody's got arms like that. Nobody can maneuver on all fours like that and leaping 15, 20, 25 feet, whatever it is. I mean, that's an extraordinary distance. You can clearly see this. I mean, the trees are big. You can see all this sort of thing. Look at the width of him compared to his arms, compared to even the trees around there. I mean, it's extraordinary. And this guy's gone in a microsecond, like across the thing. So you can watch it on my other show or the original channels. They even show a bit more of it and that sort of thing. But I cover it quite well and all kinds of things about him. And but I just wanted to put him here again. If you didn't see him, you should. If you were a skeptic before, I challenge you to figure out how some human being can have extensions like that in their arms and be able to maneuver no problems then by doing this. Like if you had stilts, like some kind of extra stilt like arm appendages, right? How are you then able to leap now 20, 25 feet each time, 15 feet, whatever it is, and all this? Come on. I mean, seriously, if you look at it, it's so natural. It's so 100% like only a wild animal like creature could do, not a person, not a regular human being. So I have even more convincing to me than the this one here, the Mighty Pattterson film. Oh, there was a few other things I had forgotten to mention. That I might have even mentioned at the beginning here. I had to cut off one of these, so if I did, I apologize. But I wanted to say that in any kinds of suits I've ever seen, the hair isn't able to flip around in more natural sort of thing, and you actually see her bangs wave on several of the frames where they go hee-hoo, you know, just like the lady's trying to give herself a little zing there. She shakes her head left or right to look sexy, yeah, you know, thing. So that's extremely strange because you won't see that in any sorts of suits, especially those eras. Also, if it was a person with a neck there and they put a helmet on, they wouldn't have been able to turn their body with it. Instead, their head would have turned and the body would have still kept staying this way. Instead, it actually, because the creature really has not much of a neck hair, when she turns, she has to turn with her head. And humans don't do this, right? And that sort of thing like that. uh, again, every single person that was out there verified the things that they said, and these sorts of things. They both passed lie detector tests. Mr. Gimlin was so nice. In fact, I might have been one of the last people that ever interviewed him. Now he does it again, but he had stopped doing it for ages. And that sort of thing, and he was very nice to do that. But yeah, he was. I explained to him I had no way of ever going to be knocking him, and I'm not doing the interview because I'm trying to disprove Bigfoot or anything. I 100%, billion% believe you, sir, that you saw this, and you're not a fraudster or any of that sort of thing. And I will defend this man to the ends of the earth. So he was interviewed by the Survivor Man and other ones, and he sort of left it on this sort of fence-ish a little bit sort of thing. But I'm telling you, man, I talked to this man. I'm good at people looking at witnesses and things like that, and I'm telling you, this man's telling you the truth. So I don't care what anybody claims, right? Rogers, same thing. Nobody in the right mind is going to make money from a film and chasing the same Bigfoot that you know is fake because you created it or whatever. Come on, I mean, seriously, nobody would do that. You can't pass lie detector tests to individuals and this sort of thing. How is it that the Bigfoot in the suit matches the prints found previous before this Bigfoot existed, and that's the whole reason why that Roger Patterson and Mr. Gimlin were after, because of these footprints found by others, nothing to do with them. I mean, every single thing comes back to this. And so, like I explained about Rennie DeHinden, he was suspicious of the film because he was looking at copies of it. Only Mrs. Patterson released the original one in more recent times. They were able, with better scientific software now, to analyze it. No tampering, no nothing. It verifies everything that everybody said, right? And that sort of thing. So, again, I will defend this film to the ends of the earth. And there's some guy that has Patterson Bigfoot fake. Here's the real truth. And he's got all these supposed witnesses that, if you listen to this, it's the most biggest hogwash. I challenge any of these people to prove one single word that they say. Because, again, police let people go when you pass lie detector tests. So now I have to believe that when I talk to these guys, both, they sounded 100% to me legitimate sort of people in these sorts of ways, right? So another thing I wanted to mention, I know a lot of times I've said about that he's on a horse, so and that sort of thing, but I wasn't mentioning that they do have four legs, of course. So now the weight's distributed slightly different. However, they still weigh hundreds of pounds. I don't know exactly how much their particular horses weighed, but no matter what, the thing is that it doesn't matter, because of that independent sort of people had tried to pressure in with other objects and things, and the estimate was at least about 1,000 pounds. The lowest was 800 and some, and the highest one was about 1,500. And similar casts were there this depths, 2.5 inch, with similar substrate, and other prints in other areas have came to this same sort of conclusion. And the fact that her footprints was twice the depth of that, and a guy sitting on a horse. So even if it was a little bit off, like some, because it's spread out and that sort of thing, you have to remember that the Bigfoot has a much bigger foot, much longer, much wider. It takes way more condensed weight here to do this. So no matter what, it would have been massive hundreds of extra pounds here onto some female or guy actor, which is impossible for them to walk fluidly like that. So again, I will stand up to the spells of the ends of the earth. So there you go. So if you didn't believe in Bigfoot before, you know what I mean? It's sort of, I think here in some of these films, when you go look at all the sort of the ones, I showed you some on here. Others, I just prefer that you take your time with Mr. Davis or other ones, and they can sort of show you each little sort of thing. I didn't want to get a gigantic 8 hour show here analyzing every little bit of it, but I just wanted to mention ones. If you're skeptical, you got to sort of like some of these are debatable for sure. I agree with you, at least maybe even 40-50% of them are, but some are not as much. And especially this one and my Russian Bigfoot. That young fellow and whoever was the filmer in behind, or his dad, buddy, or whatever, that guy is my hero of all heroes. He got the greatest quintessential film in the universe. When you see that ape creature's arms spread out like that, any person in the universe does not have arms like that. And only a giant great ape-like species would have such a thing. So I will defend it again to the ends of the earth. So that's my sort of belief. So anyways, we'll go on to next year, some other sort of interesting cryptids. But if you haven't caught any of these films, you have to. Some are on my other shows, the Russian Bigfoot and the full Patterson analysis and that sort of thing, and some other ones that I mentioned in other sorts of shows. But the rest of these, you can go look at the sort of them around and check them out and freeze the frames and analyze and look, and you'll see that it's a lot of them are more likely on the fence of reality than not. So again, we already have physical evidence that a Bigfoot-like creature exists from at least hundreds of years ago, so not long ago. They're giants, 6, 7, 8, up to 11 feet tall. They got covered with fur, and they got giant feet. I mean, come on. I mean, really? I'm not going to keep arguing about this subject with people because it's not. You're until 25 of them sit on the skeptic's head. He's not going to believe it no matter what. But I'm just saying, you have to sort of look at that. All we have is a skeptic saying they couldn't be because the guy doesn't live in the forest, but he really can't provide any proof that none of these things could exist. Or B, we listen to over 10,000 sorts of witnesses here, ancient people from thousands of years ago to today, describing the exact same sort of caveman monsters all the time. It's impossible that every single one of them made this up. And some of these films seemingly corroborate that they exist as well. So, anyways, well, next we'll go on about one of the strangest cryptids. Again, another fascinating tale I collected from the Mormons. I love these guys because they went into the most remote sort of areas and stuff. So now we're going to talk about these strange sort of coffin-like creatures that are a bit out to outer space, I'll tell you. So stay tuned for them next. So next, two berry picker reports. Both these are native girls. One out of the Micmac tribe was visiting relatives in Manitoba, and she had went berry picking and saw on this ridge above her a hairy man, and this dude was at least about 8 feet tall, and he was walking along the ridge. Relatives and her bolted and had heard stories of women missing when berry picking around this sort of area, right? So absolutely, I knew this girl really well. We were really close. And it was funny because she had no idea when she first met me that I had any interest in Sasquatch, but we started talking about weird things out in the woods and things, and I was going to ask her about this anyways, and all of a sudden she got into this, right? So and it worked out fine for me too, because I mean it's hard when you some I've dated over the ages that are completely dubious of such things, right? So when my mind is I've been studying this so long, I've come to the conclusion that yes, they exist, right? By just the tons of sort of things here, right? Like, I mean, all adding up seems more probable they do than not, right? Plus, I was within probably about 50 yards of one hearing it screaming and everything, and I did see in the 70s in this Kickapoo Creek some kind of little baby Bigfootish like sort of thing of something. So all I know is that yes, apes can live out in our woods somehow and survive, right, of some sort, right? So that sort of thing. So this, for me, the Pattterson film and all these other things, and so many people I've met, that have seen these things, and all telling me the same sort of things. I mean, it's credible to me, right? But anyways, this was she had seen this back in the 70s, so it's quite some a time ago. But the point is that around this region apparently, and there's a lot of native girls. People don't ever sort of mention these sort of things, and but I mean, who's to know that some of these aren't from some of this sort of thing? Because she seemed to be aware of it, that there was these rumors that, yeah, wild man had grabbed the sort of girl, right, and this sort of thing, and even men have disappeared and this sort of thing. So these things are known by certain tribes around. They don't talk about it much, but the thing is that it's known a little bit, right? And so again, don't everybody believe that every Bigfoot you're going to see, if you even if you believe in them, don't think that they're all the Harry and the Hendersons, because I mean, it's, be careful, right? Sort of thing like this. But the next one here, a lady, or nickname's Murby, sort of, and she's a native girl. I believe she Algonquin or Iroquois. She was one of the two there, sort of thing. But anyway, she's one of those two groups, and she lived around Catley at the time. I don't know where she lives now, but really, really nice, honest girl. Loves to fish and all that sort of thing, and a really smart, nice young lady. And but she was out in northern Quebec, someplace, I guess, again, sort of out with some kind of people doing some kind of trip. And they were, again, berry picking along this mountain ridge. And when she looked up with these others, they saw this sort of black haired ape walking along the edge of the berry sort of area. And it sort of went uphill, sort of thing. And the thing went along. And she kind of sort of said the same kind of thought, that, yeah, to stay leery of them, stay away, because she had heard things that they sometimes grab people and things, right? So she's and I'm 100% convinced that both of these ladies really saw, what they say, right? So I mean, it's just another sort of thing out there that's very interesting, right? Like, I mean, as people say the natives are superstitious and all this, but I mean, what one of these girls was working and has hired men, not all the stereotypes that people give about natives. Not all of them are doing, this or that or these things, right? Like, I mean, so this, there's a lot that are just as intelligent as you or anybody else, right? Like that sort of thing, and just as educated. Lots of them are, and that sort of thing. Just like any group always has people of whatever different sorts of ways, right? And I mean, so you can't sort of say things like that, right? But anyways, all I know is these two girls were sort of both highly cultured here, and but they know they're natives, and they like their native traditions and things like that, and they love to fish and all these sorts of things, and they're as native as you can humanly sort of get, sort of idea. But they sort of work in our sort of white guy world, right, sort of thing. And both of these people, I'm sure, from the highest probability that both of them did see a Sasquatch, and both of them believe that occasionally they'll grab you. And it's interesting how many accounts are always around these berry areas. So that's the thing, as I've mentioned in my shows about how to catch one of these things. Me personally, I've read ancient records in diaries from the 1700s, the 1500s, the 1400s, okay, sort of things from Europe, and the 18 and 1900s up into the 20th century, all of two sorts of great baits here. Salted fish in barrels. There's something about the salted fish in barrels that Sasquatch seems to like. Whether he lives in Europe, whether he lives in BC, whether he lives in Florida, there's stories all across the exact same thing. And one of them is so convincing, it's in this lady's diary. from the 1800s. She mentions about she was terrified. She locked her children inside sort of the cabin because of this giant Bigfoot hairy man, but she had no name for Bigfoot. She just described him as this gigantic tall man that was able to rip this barrel apart in seconds and sort of get at the fish, right? Full of covered hair and that. I mean, these are all random people in their own sort of things, and they're all telling you the same sort of thing, right? And the other one is berry picking, because obviously this creature, like bears, would eat berries. And there's even interesting accounts of where children were said that they were kidnapped by giant bears because they didn't know what a Bigfoot is. So the only thing they could relegate to was bears. But they said, now get a load of this, at night they would hug them and keep them warm and feed them with the palm of their hand, with one hand, berries. Now, come on. I mean, seriously, this is a little child that vanished for days that should have frozen to death. And not only one, numerous of these wacky, same exact stories where they describe him as a bear man or a witch one time, because I guess all the black, like maybe the black fur, I have no idea. But these always the same thing where the creature kept them sort of warm somehow at night and fed them some kind of berries or stuff. I mean, it's not probable that little children and all these people make up these same exact sort of things. People just got to accept the truth. They really do exist. So, yeah, that's it. Now, here's an interesting account. As I told you, I've gotten some really great Mormon accounts from a unicorn that was seen out in sort of Northwest Territories from this Mormon sort of guy. He saw a whole pack of them, and he said that the natives around there back then would try and get the last ones, and they believed that the horns had some kind of magical powers on them and things. And I mean, this totally, like, I mean, very interesting, right? The dragon one I told you about, the other sort of the priest guy, even though he wasn't a Mormon, but I mean, with the Hounds of Hell, 100% of now proven factual thing, right on the same church. A 7 foot plus monster, giant black dog from hell sort of idea. And really, as the guy said, he killed him and his buddies. They had still his paw print on the door. It still exists there. You can still go see it. But they actually found the body. The whole story's 100% true. So these shoot dogs did exist. And just like these kinds of guys here, when they tell you these weird stories, so far, a lot of these are ending up being factual later, of some kind of thing you can add to prove their actual story. And in that one particular guy, it's 100% now proven that, yes, a shook-like dog really did go into and attack a church and bust in, and really did try and kill patrons, and really they killed this dude and buried him and gave him a Christian burial because they found him. Right? So the end of it is not a myth. There's all kinds of people on the internet that use this as a story of mythical. It's not a myth. It's 100% factual. And I believe probably this one is too. In the Western U.S. there, when the Mormons were going into the more sort of wilder areas and things, they some of them had given these accounts of this strange sort of turtle-like creature with very long legs, okay, but the thing had a sort of a box-like, sort of almost like a funeral casket on its back, like a turtle-like shell. And they would walk in single file and do strange things, almost like Nazis, right? And maneuver their ways through the mountains. Now, the very only small amount of reports for a certain amount of time, all from these early sort of things in this very small, limited ranges. And that's it, and then never to be sort of mentioned again that I've ever heard of anyways, right? So just another sort of fascinating thing. I love these Mormon diaries and some of these things. You can find some fascinating sort of tales in there that some of them, like I said, end up being later on. Again, I just don't believe that people, missionaries and all this, are going to write in their own personal memoirs fake things like that. I don't sort of believe this. So anyways, that's just, yeah, one of those sort of things there. But Here, another interesting one. I decided I got so many thousands of newspaper articles that each time I do one of these shows, I'm just going to show you a bizarre one that is related to something or other, right? And this time we're going to talk about a fanged Bigfoot, so another sort of chupacabra like Bigfoot, like I've told you about in the past and showed you in other newspaper articles. But this one here, here's an early account. A Georgian tells of fighting 6-foot fanged beasts. Dawson, Georgia. Georgia forestry officials yesterday were looking for a 6-foot tall hairy beast with fangs as long as a man's finger, reported to have attacked a forester near here. Joseph Whaley of Dawson, he was out or something, and some of this is getting blurry here. But anyways, this guy, he said he looked like some kind of a gorilla, okay, and but it had these huge fangs and this sort of thing. And there was another similar one that was reported around there, but they said that one was leaping, and he said this one was kind of slow and this sort of thing, and didn't seem to be probably the same one that was seen in another thing. But I mean, maybe the creature was just deciding to move slower. Who knows, right? But whatever the case, there's an, I mean, these are countless amounts from everywhere, from Virginia to Vermont. It doesn't matter where it is. These always the same sort of thing, and they're so old, some of these, that they're mind-boggling, right? Like, I mean, here's another one here, 1885 Winnipeg, Portland, Oregon there, sort of, and another one here. I mean, these things with these wild long hair, everything's the same, right? It's always the same sort of thing, right? I'm not even going to bother reading this one, but I'm just giving you the idea that here, that it's improbable that, each time these guys, like a lot of these papers didn't have these sort of sort of things yet, or these sorts of things, so they would only know about this story locally. Only local people would have read it. Okay, so you have to then believe that somehow across every single time a hillbilly newspaper in the 1830s is going to tell you the exact same story as a guy here in Winnipeg and another one over here and everything. Why is it always the same? 6, 7, 8 feet tall, occasionally smaller ones once in a blue moon, and other sort of areas, these gorilla-like. The last one had claws, a little bit of areas, this sort of thing. Oh, that was another thing on that previous one. I should have mentioned that. I wanted to put him in here too because he also has a bit of werewolfy qualities. The guy said he had a sort of like a pointed sort of a face, right? And that sort of thing. So this might have been an actual werewolf instead of an actual Sasquatch, but nevertheless, this gives you the idea. Like, I mean, again, how people can keep claiming this is a 1950s invention and all this sort of stuff is, a bit out there. But anyways, well, stay tuned for next shows there. I just wanted to give you a bit of coverage of that. And more and more, I'm going to sort of do new ones of different sorts and add some different features and things like that. But I just wanted you to go check some of these out, because even for the most skeptical people, some of them are very convincing and very hard to believe that you could be a person in a suit for that. And especially, like I said, the Pattterson and the Russian film, to me, are both very, nobody's going to be able to prove that they are fake, sort of thing, because I'd really like to see how some human can make leaps like that through this divoted terrain with all kinds of branches and trees laying all over the place. The guy can trip in a millionth of a second. His arms are like so much massively longer than any human being I've ever seen in my entire life, and everything else. Come on, I mean, really. So, you gotta get to a point where skepticism's got to stop, because we've been reporting this for 6,000 years. We've shot literally hundreds of these things over the centuries, where the odd one's been killed here and there, so it's not like as if they haven't even been captured occasionally, but it's just simply that each time the explanation, the nobody cared at the time, the creature just died in a cemetery somewhere, or whatever the case, fell down a cliff, a canyon, whatever, these sorts of things, and nobody knows what happens to the body. And just in modern times, nobody's done this, except some people make these claims that police and army and stuff have taken these things from them. And that actually that could be true. So they may, like I said, possibly already know these things exist and just deny them due to Darwinism or other strange things. But anyways, we'll continue on. I'm sorry I have not been able to get the muskrat film up yet because we cannot find. I've tried about 100 people now. Nobody still has an old VCR. So anyways, I'm gonna keep looking. We'll eventually get it out there soon. So stay tuned to the next show, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.